the first step of making the board game is so difficult because you have all these ideas in your brain, but it's hard to make a physical representation of it.
So when it came time, you had the idea of dice fights, your buddy helped you do the machine learning, and you're all of a sudden, hey, this one is simple enough to where I can, punch it through.
Yeah. I want it to be 20 minutes or less on average. I want someone to learn it in less than 5 minutes. I've been in the business world enough that people understand that communicating with a team of people sometimes takes some time.
Warning, may contain sharing darkness, dice fights, Brandon Sanderson, motivation, and/or peanuts. Ian Woodstock.
Well, man, I am super excited to have you as I Am Woodstock Season 2, Episode 1. We have known each other for quite some time. What? Yeah, 30, how old are you?
29. 29
years. You're not
years.
30 yet?
Yeah, soon. 2 more months.
You're becoming an old man.
Yeah. Everyone in my... I work with a bunch of straight out of high school kids. That's all of my employees, and they all call me an old man because I'm groaning and walking around. I'm like, can you lift that garbage? I'm afraid I'm going to hurt myself. And they're like, you old man. I'm like, yeah. So I guess I'm just accepting it as a part of my life.
So we've done an episode before, and it was decided not to be aired because I think the situation we were in, I was visiting you. I had my trailer studio parked
it was
outside.
The maiden voyage.
We
were testing out a lot of things.
And it originally, I had not planned on actually recording an episode, but we ordered some hot wings, ended up doing the Hot Ones full stretch. You purchased all of them. Yeah.
You didn't try all of, well, I had all of them, but you wanted to try the hottest one.
No, we worked our way through them all.
Did we go through every single?
We went through the whole one. After the bomb,
time.
The other two were nothing. Yeah. Which they had a pretty good flavor, though.
Yeah, I think that's smart of Hot Ones, too, that they have a climax and then they let it taper off because their guess would be unintelligible if they went hotter.
They still are unintelligible, which is why we did not air our episode. Not only did we take some insanely hot sauces to where I legit felt high, but we were also imbibing on other substances that definitely were out of our minds by the time we even decided, hey, it's a good idea to record a podcast episode. And I think it was late at night as well. So we were sleep deprived.
It was 2 a.m. when we got to recording. Yeah.
So I went back and listened to it, and it kind of made me sad that I couldn't release that. Maybe we'll release it as a extra material later on, but because we talked about some very good stuff. The things I love about talking about on the show are the dark parts of people's lives, because I think that's the thing that helps other people. When you hear someone talk about an experience that they've gone through that's hard, you yourself have gone through that experience or are currently going through the experience, or
makes
maybe
you feel
will
less
someday.
Alone.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
If you're suffering through any mental health thing, and then you hear oh yeah, I was in a time where I could barely get out of bed, and you see wait, this successful person that I look up to has been through this before. The more light you shed on it, I just feel like it's better for everyone.
I fully, truly believe that every person who is born is going to go through some awful shit through their life. And at some point when you're in that dark part, you're going to think that there's no escape. And the fact of the matter is there is. You can get out of it. You will get out of it. It's just a matter of time and learning yourself.
And sometimes you need help to get out of it. So one of the biggest things for me, because I definitely have been in pretty depressive things, and one of the things that kind of kicked me out of it is one of my good friends was hey, you're really doing bad things to people around you. You need to go to therapy.
Bad things to people around you,
I just, I essentially wasn't considerate of anyone and their time and their feelings, right? Because I was so in myself with my depression and whatever. I'm like, I'm just dealing with a lot of stuff. I'm just this. I'm just this. I'm just this. And in the meantime, I was hurting my friends and family because I couldn't see the world around me. And so one of my friends that I hurt badly, which I won't go into details that way, was like, hey, I can't deal with you anymore. You need to go to therapy. I really care for you, but I'm not this person to help you. Like, promise you're going to therapy. And because I respected her so much, I was like, okay, I'll go. And like me and my wife's family motto, Woodstock family motto, we came up with is Woodstocks never lie. And I'm kind of like that in life. I can't lie. If you ask me a straight up question, I have to answer it. So pro tip, if you're ever talking to me and you want to know something, just make it a yes or no question.
If I don't answer, it means I don't want to lie to you.
Yeah, exactly. And so since I promised I was going to do that, I was so grumpy when I went to the therapist. I was like, yeah, I'm coming. This is going to do nothing for me. Therapy's stupid. I was very much like Rick in the therapy world. Rick and Morty, Rick. But yeah, but then I remember there was one phrase that really like helped focus me, and it's like, motivation is not like, it's an emotion, and it's often action precedes motivation. That phrase, action precedes motivation.
And that helped you, get out of depression, or that was what made you accept the therapy? What? Yeah,
because one of the things that was a big problem for me is like, one, I felt like if I didn't do anything with my life, that no one would care. Like, because I had a job where I went out of town for 4 or 5 days out of the week, and there would be times that I would get back in town and I wouldn't see a soul, not one of my friends, and no one would even like text or call me, right? So it was like, I was like, man, like I could just stop existing and no one would even notice, right? Which doesn't feel good. But then I also, because of that, felt no motivation. Like you've known me for a long time. I've had a lot of business ideas. I've had a lot of projects that I've worked on, like this board game, right? Two Brothers Touring Company, the Paint Place, like Bag Boy. These are all failed.
Bag Boy. We'll have to talk about that one later. I don't remember that.
It was actually probably my first business idea way back in the day. It was right before we went up to North Dakota together.
It's like DoorDash.
Yeah, it was grocery shopping for people.
So it was DoorDash before DoorDash was a thing.
Yeah. And I even got like a few clients, but it was like mom died, and then I was like going to North Dakota. So I even had like some really good like advertising deals with the hospital where we were gonna like, I probably would have been pretty successful person, but
because that was way before any of this app-based delivery system, which is now the norm after COVID.
Yeah,
so
now
you would have been
so
ground level years and years. How many years before COVID was that? I remember you coming up with that idea.
It was 10, 11, 12, so like 10, it was 10 years ago. So it was 8 years before COVID.
I remember being a naysayer too. I'm like, no one's going to, like, who's going to be able to do this for cheap enough? And I don't know how HEB delivers for like, what is it, $5-10? I don't know how they make money on that.
Well, like Costco and Walmart, with their pickup service, where you just go on your website and put it up and you just drive up, they'll bring it out to your car and you drive away. Like, that's
free pickup.
Crazy.
I love living in 2023. Anyways,
really cool things.
We digress too. You had all those business ideas and you lost all that motivation because of depression.
Yeah. So my biggest gripe with the therapist was I have no motivation. It left. And he's like, it's an emotion. Like, it's not something you should be feeling. Like, you shouldn't be happy 24/7 of the time. You shouldn't be motivated 24/7. It's an emotion. And so action precedes motivation. If you just start doing stuff, you'll find that emotion, just like when you do other things in life that encourage you to be happy, you got to do the things to make you happy. It's not, you don't get motivated to get motivated, right?
So if you want to do something specific and you want to be motivated to do that thing, you need to do something that works towards that thing. You need to dedicate a certain amount of time a day or week to that thing, and then that builds, that snowballs the motivation.
And honestly, like, you just got to start really small. Like, if the thing that you have to have on your to-do list is getting up and taking a shower, and you check it off your to-do list, get that little endorphin high. I took a shower today, which for someone in a deep depressive state is a big deal. It's like one of the main ways that you can see someone's depressed when they stop taking care of themselves, stop taking showers. So
either that or they're just a hippie.
Yeah. Either way.
or are all hippies depressed? I don't know.
Is that why they're hippies? Is because they're depressed?
I don't think so.
Not the case. But yeah, you just start little things, and these premises really just followed up in a lot of things. Because another thing that really got to me was that like most ideas and things get lost in the like proof of concept. Like it gets lost in conception. Like most people will be like, it's a good idea. What if we did this? Like I remember thinking about it like ketchup bottles, where I'm like, why don't they just make a flatter base for a ketchup bottle so it can just store on its head, right? I had that thought.
And then you do nothing about it, and then you see someone else actually do it.
And then you're upset when, if you just do the thing, like instead of thinking about all the problems that could happen, just start doing it. And why worry about problems that aren't happening yet? Like you just need to start doing stuff, and then when the problems arise, deal with that problem and then move on with your life. Instead of being like, well, what if these 100,000 problems come up? Okay, it doesn't matter. Like probably in the process of getting them manufactured for a different ketchup bottle, getting that patented, you'll run into a couple dozen problems, but it's not the 1,000 that you have to figure out before you even start. Like to quote Brandon Sanderson, it's all about the momentum. It's all about the next step when you go into things.
What's the most important step? It's not the first step or the last step.
It's always the next step. Always the next step.
Love me some Sanderson.
And I was actually during that biggest depressive point in my life, I went to therapy, and then I was listening to Oathbringer, and it said that. Like it was the end part, and I was just bawl. I often just bawl through the entire time I'm listening to that. It's very therapeutic for me. And it was talking about, it's not the first step. It's always the next step, because if I fall, I'll get up as a better man. And I'm just sort of like, I needed that. Oh God.
I mean, it's beautiful. The one thing about you see it a lot through all of the Stormlight archives is he talks about mental health a lot in there, and I don't think you get that in a lot of fantasy books. Normally, it's an escape mechanism to go. Let's go, follow this hobbit on this cool adventure, and you're off in this other land, and you're like, oh, I love this other land, but they don't actually address
PTSD,
real life things. And Sanderson knocked it out of the park without being overly like, okay, we get it, Brandon. It's he just has these characters develop that you truly feel for them, and then he has this one little phrase at the end, and you're like, oh shit, we've been talking about depression this whole time, or we've been talking about PTSD, and like you don't even like, because he doesn't say the word.
It's just character.
You get to watch them, and like, why is he acting this way? Oh, okay, it's because he's got PTSD from this horrific event that happened to him and his brother.
Yeah.
So I think congratulations, Sanderson, you did it yet again. What can he touch that doesn't suck other than the Wheel of Time TV series? Again, we were talking, I'd love to sit down with him and ask him how much say he had on the final like production of that show, but I don't know, man. We rewatched a little bit of it last night because we had a disagreement, and I'd like to point out for the viewers, I was right.
He was
100% right. But we pulled it up just a little bit. Just watching it, it gave me like, I don't know, I got sad.
Yeah.
It's not what I was hoping. It started off great, and I think they still can turn it around. I'd plain,
they need someone like Henry Cavill in there that cares, like an actor that cares so deeply about the story that they like kickback on that. Granted, they kicked him out of The Witcher for it, but The Witcher, he kicked himself out of The Witcher because of that. But The Witcher was
not
great.
Getting a Superman thing on top of it.
Oh, he got it, and then there's going to be a big lawsuit with that. He's going to
really think so. I haven't looked into it
because he left it to do Superman, and then after that leaving, they said, "Okay, you're out.
We're going."
That's a huge
direction.
Breach in contract.
Well, I don't know what their contract was, right?
Yeah.
So let the lawyers figure that out. Regardless, going back to how the whole entire this episode started was talking about, being vulnerable and talking about that. I think that's one of the things that I love doing about the podcast is helping people out. People who listen are going to get small little nuggets. Most of the time they're listening to this, they're going to be in their car doing housework, and there's just that one little phrase that'll click out. And I think when I have guests and I'm able to, create a safe space for them to share that stuff, that's when I feel like I succeed the most. When I get feedback from listeners saying, "Hey, this episode really struck a chord. Thank you." That makes it all worthwhile, right? And one thing that after listening to our last episode, I felt like a shitty older brother is kind of what you said earlier. You lived a portion of your life to where you felt like no one was there and no one cared. And I was, I'm 9 years older than you. That's kind of a whole lifetime when you're very young. So we didn't really know each other at all until we were adults. Mm-hmm. And that's one of my biggest regrets. My motto in life is no regrets, and that's one where I can't take it back. But doing things like this and being able to grow our friendship as adults is one way that I can, I guess, repay my past self of like, "Hey, Jace, you fucked up. Let's make this better." So I'm fucking fantastic or ecstatic to have you on as the first episode, especially because, as you can see with this backdrop here, for people who are watching the video, you've came up with something that I think is just amazing. We played it for the last hour, and I finally beat you in it. It's your new board game, Dice Fights. Well, do you consider it a board game if there's no boards? 'Cause it's just dice.
Me and Rebecca, my wife, argue heavily about this because I still consider it a board game because it's more about a genre of things you're playing, but the technical definition would be a tabletop game because a board game traditionally includes an actual board as well as pieces on the board that are moving. But I think the whole board game community would still call this a board game, even though it's technically just a tabletop game.
I would put it in the same realm as something like LCR. It's something that's small package. It's very quick and easy to learn how to play, but there's no board. So, but it's still a tabletop. I could see this someday on the shelf in Walmart or something. If you want to go to a more larger wholesale production,
I would be tickled pink to see this in Walmart. Our friend Kyle works at Walmart, and I was like, "What do I gotta do to get it in your specific store? Can I just like slip you a pallet and see what happens?" And he's like, "Oh no, you got to go through distribution." I'm like, "Ah."
Yeah, they have like exactly where everything's
supposed to be. He said it's surprisingly easy to get on the shelves, and I'm like, "Oh, what's it like?" And he's like, "Oh, I have no idea." I'm like, so it's not surprisingly okay, but
so far I love the way that you've been about it because it kind of ties into what we were just talking about, how motivation comes with just taking that step. Mm-hmm. There's people who will spend years in developing a game and then just feel like, it's not perfect yet. It's not perfect. And you came up with a very simple idea. You jumped on it. You'd already set up manufacturing and it was shipping before I'd even heard about it. Like this one, you normally call me ahead of time and say, "Hey, I've got this idea. What do you think?" And so when you called me and told me about this, I was shocked that you'd already pulled the trigger on everything.
Yeah, it went really quick. Like I'm almost embarrassed to say how quick it was because a lot of like other indie board game designers are like, "Are you kidding me? I spent 5 years in development." But it is a very different game, and there are problems with it that could get better and can easily get better. But as I was telling you kind of off the camera, I had a friend who is a machine learning programmer, right? And he's in my D&D group, so I'm a DM for a D&D group. And
nerd alert.
One of the very first play tests of this game I did, because I needed play testers, and I was like, here's what I'm going to do. So I set up a scene where they were like in a party room and they saw people playing dice in the corner, and they took the bait and they went over to see what the game was, and it was dice fights in the D&D campaign, except it wasn't dice fights. Yeah, I didn't even have a name for it. I actually, at the time, I was calling it It's Time to Roll the Dice. That was the name of it at the time.
I like the change.
But it was like a Wheel of Time reference that I was like, it's time to roll the dice. Anyways, and so they were actually playing against an NPC, which was me, and we played the game in the D&D campaign.
Really? I didn't know that. That's pretty cool.
And I was blatantly cheating as the NPC character.
As in character?
In character, I was cheating. And I thought I was doing it super blatant because I would like pick up the dice, I'd change it to gold, and I'd put it down, right? Because I was hoping anyone would catch me so it could be a big deal and a fight would break out or something. But no one caught me, so they were like betting on the game in the game. So
and your NPC like took them for all their money because they didn't catch you cheating?
Correct. Yeah.
That's kind of dirty.
But one of the people I played, they were the machine programmer, and so he really liked playing the game, and he went and just he kind of hyperfixates on things sometimes, so he loved it. He went home and programmed this game out, and he was like texting me like questions, what if this, and it actually helped me like define the rules, because he was asking me all the right questions in order to make it a program. And so we got the parameters, and he basically made it so he clicked a button and it played through 10,000 times, which like there's actually a big debate in the board game community, like using AI to help create board games and whatnot, which that's not AI, that's machine learning. There's a very specific difference with that, I think. If you know more, let us know.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting question I'd like to figure out.
But yeah, it basically took the playtesting period way down.
Because you could get a list of the data, get some charts, and say, oh, this is...
Because what you want to do, because this is my second game I've created, there's another game that's still in development called Terraform. But what you want to do in your playtesting is you're trying to break your game. You want to, like, you're trying to balance out your game. So if there was one strategy that was way stronger than all other strategies with no counters, then you want to adjust that. And so I actually had to do a couple adjustments with the costs of upgrade, because it used to be that attack and defense were the same gold upgrade, but attack was so much more powerful of an upgrade, so you had to make defense less gold, and that kind of helped balance that out a little bit. And then gold was, it used to be all three of them were the same upgrade, but gold was like ultra strong upgrade as well. So that really helped, because then I was able to go back to him and be like, oh, put this as the new gold amounts. And then you saw the bell curve kind of flatten out on the winning strategies.
Wow, that's huge. Being able to skip pretty much all of your, all right, let's play this 1,000 times in real life.
Which can take a couple of years, like especially if you got a big game like Frosthaven, Gloomhaven. Imagine, I don't know if you played any Arkham horror games or anything like that. Those are some pretty intensive games, setup, takedown, all that. So to go through 1,000 playthroughs of something like that can take years of time, especially because after you make an adjustment on the rules, it almost has to reset your counter of playthroughs. Because if you make a major adjustment, you just change the whole game. So now you got to start over on the playthroughs. So that really helped a lot. I'm gonna need to tag him in this in a video of this. So I tried to tell him like, what you did, super awesome. I wish
your buddy that created the machine learning.
Yeah,
no, that's fantastic. So when did you decide that you're like dream was to create board games. Has that been a while, or is that a recent development?
So I definitely have thought about other ways, like the 9 to 5 life doesn't feel good for my heart and soul necessarily, though I'm like good at it, whatever. I've become managers, whatever. And I've played Dungeons and Dragons forever. Me and Scott actually used to make up board games and play them when we were younger, but
Really?
just like out of paper and stuff like that. And then, but it was probably 5-6 years ago. I was driving, because it was not even an option as a way to make money at all in my head, making board games. Like it was not in the sphere of understanding, but I was driving with, I have a commute back and forth from the ranch I work at. It's 2 hours on a dirt road, and I'm just looking at beautiful landscapes. And right now, and I had a guy in my car, and we started talking about board games for whatever reason. He's like, "Oh yeah, I have a buddy that," or I was like, "Man, I've always wanted to make a board game that you could like change the landscapes as you're going. I feel like that you could like change the board as you're going. That would be really cool. I haven't really seen that before." And he's like, "Oh yeah, a buddy of mine actually makes board games, and he sells them, and he makes like pretty good like passive income on it." And I'm like, "What? Did he like go with a publisher?" He's like, "No, he just made the game and had a good network of people, so he ordered 10,000 of them and just started selling them." And I'm like, "What? That's possible? I could do that probably." And so that's when I first started working on Terraform, my first game. But there was a lot of things I didn't know. And it was just like the first step of making the board game is so difficult because you have all these ideas in your brain, but it's hard to make a physical representation of it enough so that you could play. Like my first prototype of Terraform was literally a cardboard box that had a bunch of paint on it, right? That I just like got a marker and I drew squares in about the size of the cards. And then I had like poker chips and Magic the Gathering cards. And that was it. And then I like made some really bad like explanation of color changing.
Isn't that the first time that you had me play it? Was that same setup?
No, you got like version 3.
Oh, really? Okay.
Like this was rough. And I eventually got it to where I kind of got some good rules, and I invited a bunch of nerdy friends I had over to try this game. And it was so complicated. So Terraform right now has like 4 colors. It's kind of rock, paper, scissory. I simplified it. This one had 5 colors. There was multiple things. You had to play with your cards revealed so everyone could see what everyone else could do. So it was just sort of like, oh, before I play.
Mexican standoff type of deal.
Yeah, before I play my card, I have to look at everyone else's card and think of every possibility that everyone could possibly do. But there's so many possibilities. It took 3.5 hours to play that playthrough with 4 people. And they enjoyed it. I think Scott ended up winning the game.
Naturally.
Because Scott's our brother, and he's broken. He's broken. His board gaming ability is nuts. He really should be the one making board games, but he is actually a great source for like play testing and all that. Because he's great. If my real goal in life, Jace, is to make enough money on board games that I could get Scott Woodstock and Jace Woodstock. Yep, and just pay you guys full-time salary, and we just make board games and play board games and do stuff like this. It would be the best possible life, I think.
You get a clubhouse and call it Woodstock Playhouse.
Woodstock Clubhouse, Woodstock Playhouse. It'd be good. It would be good stuff. But it took a long time, and I actually got like a fair amount of negative feedback about Terraform. It's not it was valuable feedback. Like a lot of things needed to change. Like,
yeah, you had a lot of when version 3 that I saw came out. I know I had a lot of feedback, and it comes down to, I think if you're a pro gamer, you could pick that game up pretty quick, but to the average Joe, it was a lot. I'd never be able to play that with my 9-year-old daughter, for example.
Even though we did, and she won. She
actually
once.
won, but we were playing for her. I mean,
we were telling her the best moves to make.
Yeah, exactly.
But something that I kind of like, so when I moved to Texas, I actually started developing that a lot more, kind of deep dove into it. That's when we played a lot more. I started doing the art for it, doing a lot more play tests, little here and there. And then I started trying the manufacturing, figuring out manufacturing. And I didn't know there was a community of awesome people out there that would just answer your questions for free about board game development. Because there is a giant community of people that are that way. But I didn't know they existed at the time. So I was like reaching out to a couple people, and I was like, do you know anything about manufacturing? Like, because I had like Googled like make board game custom and some American manufacturers came up, and my cost of Terraform, if I went through them, was going to be like $45, my cost per unit, which is most people suggest doing 6 times the cost.
Oh, wow.
Of the game, which as an indie publisher is not super realistic. Like that starts becoming realistic once you are able to order 10,000.
Yeah, you order bulk, and it's
Yeah, and that cost that I was telling you about, that was if I ordered 10,000.
Holy cow!
American manufacturer. I would have had to drop $400,000 to do this with Terraform, and I was just overwhelmed. I'm like, there's no way. Like, I know enough about business to know, like, there's something I'm missing. There's something that I am horribly missing here. And so someone sent me a number of a guy, and he was like, yeah, you got to go to China. You got to go overseas to manufacture. Like, Ticket to Ride was one that was like, they were very heavy. I'm pretty sure I'm thinking of the right game, but they were very heavy. Like, we want to be made in the United States, right? But they were having a margin of like 10% on their games, and they were self-publishing, which is bad.
Did Ticket to Ride originally self-publish?
I believe so.
Because that's something you can buy in the Walmarts now, right?
Yeah, that's an evergreen, super popular. It's everywhere, right?
Everyone knows that, even not.
And someone listening could be like, yeah, he's full of crap. He doesn't know what he's talking about. But I'm pretty...
Well, do you?
What?
Apparently not. You're unsure. So.
Well, I'm like 90% sure what I'm saying is correct, but I could be mixing it up with another game name. This scenario exists, but they essentially switched. There's a whole documentary about it. They switched to a Chinese manufacturer, and they're instantly profitable because...
Well, they already have everything set up. If everything's already made in this location, whether it's paper, plastic, which is 99% of all board games, and it's just changing the graphics and the size of everything, you're not having to battle finding a big, huge production line. And then it just makes sense that you can do it way cheaper where stuff's already being manufactured.
Yeah. And
slave labor. Yeah. Both of those things.
Well, the manufacturer I work with in China, I don't think there's any of that going on.
I'm joking.
Yeah. But honestly, that's super overwhelming to tell an indie board game designer that they're going to have to try to communicate with a manufacturer in China and somehow design and develop a board game. Like, that honestly threw me off the trail.
So you just found a liaison to talk to the manufacturer for you?
No, I just stopped trying at that point in life with Terraform.
Yeah. Okay.
And then...
So when it came time, you had the idea of dice fights, your buddy helped you do the machine learning, and you're all of a sudden, hey, this one is simple enough to where I can punch it through.
Yeah. Well, I actually read that book, 4 Hour Workweek, right? And it was talking about how to make products. It talks about coming up with products and whatnot. And in there, it talks about coming up with a product that has like intellectual backings that can't be copied easily. Like, because if you come up with a lotion or a headphone, right, they just have to get your headphone, send it to another manufacturer, and you can have rip-offs within a week, right? But with a board game, you can't rip off intellectual property very easily, right? So he suggests finding something that has some intellect, like a book, right? If you write a book, it's a lot of intellectual property, whatever. So I was like, I'm halfway through making a board game right now. Like, I could just finish that, but I'm like, no, it's just way too complicated. I need to make something more simple. So I gave myself parameters. I want it to be 20 minutes or less on average. I want someone to learn it in less than 5 minutes. Those are my parameters. And then I had thought about a game me and Scott came up with where we just had like a bucket of dice. And I'm like, hey, let's make up this game. And so we had played this game like a year ago, me and Scott. And I was like, that could be that game because all I have to do is manufacture dice in a box. That's super easy. That's way less parts than Terraform, which has a deck, a board, a legend board, another legend board, cards, and 30 tokens, right? So I was like, okay, I think I can just do this. So I just started like taking the next step over and over again with it. In fact, I'm like, if this gets shared to board game developers in the groups I'm a part of, I'm going to be so embarrassed. Hopefully it does, but I had gone to the manufacturers before I had any designs. I just knew there was going to be 6. Like, I didn't have the sword, the shield, anything. I just was like, hey, can you make all these dice? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, sweet, because it just needs a sword on one side, a shield on one side, and a bag of money on the other side. And I just thought they were going to put like some clip art on it or something, or they had some like stock photos they were going to throw on the dice for me.
They tell you to pound sand.
No, they were like, yeah, that sounds great. Just send over the designs. And I'm like, oh, the designs? You don't just have some designs? Like, oh no, you need to send us the designs. So I would like message back, oh yes, of course. Let me get with my head designer and I'll be right back with you. Meanwhile, it was just me
talking to yourself.
Me talking to Rebecca. Rebecca, we need art. And so I like ran onto Fiverr and we like put out a request. And
I have to clarify, Fiverr.
Oh, Fiverr.
We don't know how it's pronounced. We actually went online.
It's Fiverr.
I think it's Fiverr.
I'm sorry, internet. Okay,
I'm going to start saying Fiverr now.
So I went onto Fiverr. We found a great guy from Pakistan. I had made some very bad art to like give him an idea of it.
This is what he came up with?
And this is what he came up with. He came up with the logo as well. And all.
Oh, he came up with the Woodstock Games logo?
Yep.
That's pretty good. I like it.
He did all the stuff for $250, which I think is still, this thing right here, we made ourselves by getting some clip art.
What is it? The 2 players, 10 to 20 minutes, ages 8 and up.
Yep. And so we ended up sending those over, and then they kept on just asking us questions that we didn't know we needed to know. And I kept on being like, oh yes, I'll just get with my team, because I've been in the business world enough that like people understand that communicating with a team of people sometimes takes some time, right? But if it's just you, they're like, what the heck? Why don't you know the answers? But if you're like, oh, I'm just the liaison talking for my team, I don't have all the answers, they give you some slack. So, so I would always respond, oh yeah, I'll get with my executive director, which
was you.
No,
I'm going to get with myself.
Rebecca's the executive director, actually. Okay. I'm the head designer, and as well as owner. But we wear many hats. But yeah, and then we sent that out, and the first couple manufacturers were kind of dunces, and there was one. We got through the whole process. There's this you send them all the designs. They generally send you like templates to put your designs into to fit their products. And then they send you e-proofs, which e-proofs are generally just like a digital rendering of the product to make sure it's what you think it is.
Yeah.
And the digital rendering of the D20, it wasn't a spin down D20. So if you don't know, there's two kinds of D20s. There's spin down D20s, and then there's like the statistical D20s. Statistical D20s, the numbers will be like
you have 1 on one side,
20.
20 on the other side.
Yeah, 19 and 20 wouldn't be by each other, and so on and so forth. It's randomized. Where a spin down, all the numbers are right next to the other number, and because it's a life counter, I was like, that's super important to me. And it's already a common, like if you play Magic the Gathering and you get Magic the Gathering 20-sided dice, they're all spin down. So most like nerd culture people know what a spin down is, and they would kind of expect a life counter that's a D20 to be a spin down. So I was like, we gotta have this. And I actually asked for that up front. I'm like, we need a spin down D20, and they said they could do it. But now we're at the very end of the process. The last e-proof they sent was the D20, and it wasn't a spin down. I'm like, that's going to be a spin down, right? And they're like, what does that mean? There was a language barrier going on. So I had to like go find diagrams of a spin down, be like, this is what we need. And they're like, oh, I got to check. And they ended up being like, nope, we can't do that.
Oh, really?
It's not possible for our manufacturer. Our factory, we don't have the molds for it. We can't do it. And so I was just sort of like, oh, I remember calling a bunch of people like Scott. I'm like, Scott,
is this big enough a deal to where I need to go change manufacturers?
Like I just spent 3 weeks with this manufacturer.
Did you pay any money up front?
No.
Okay, that's good.
Generally, when you start paying money is when you ask for the prototype, because they generally have a prototype fee, which can range heavily depending on the product, but $150 to $250 pretty average for the size of a project. And Scott was like, it's not that big of a deal, and other people were like, that's a huge deal. Like,
yeah, I was actually, me being a person who's not in the like D&D community, I never use D20s, 12 or 20-sided dice. I noticed very early on that you did have the, what do you call it, spin down, because I'm like, oh shoot, I'm gonna have to sit here forever and try to find the next. And I looked, I'm like, oh, they're all right here. So I really think that was something that you should have stuck to your guns with. Yeah,
and we ended up dropping them and searching for new ones. And I was doing most of this on Alibaba at the time and getting quotes through Alibaba. And there was like 5 manufacturers in a row after that we came to the same problem, no spin down. So it started being like the first question, like, do you have spin down D20s? And they'd always say yes. And then you'd be like, no, really.
Send me a picture of a spin down.
I would send them a spin down, like, we need this kind of dice where the numbers are like this. And then they'd be like, oh, no, we don't do that. Gotcha. It was surprising how many people didn't. And then Rebecca actually just did some Googling and found a company called Nice Funny Games. It's a pretty small manufacturing company. Like, we were working with the owner of the company the whole time.
Oh, wow.
And which was super great. You could tell he really cared about whatever. He normally responds to our emails like within 24 hours if we send it. Very responsive, very understanding. He's like, we're like, oh yeah, we got a family, whatever. He's like, oh, I got a daughter too. We're going to go camping, blah, blah. So it like, there was a pretty good relationship.
And he was a Chinese gentleman.
Yeah. He lives just right out of Hong Kong.
Okay.
There's a little manufacturing district out to the northeast of Hong Kong, which I can't remember the name of right now. But yeah, and it was really great working with him. He was able to do. There was a couple things we had to slide down on. One of the things that we almost gave up on was the box because quite a few people said they couldn't do a square box.
Really?
For whatever reason, like they weren't set up for that. We almost manufacture the dice and the box separately, and then we're going to ship them to us and do that. But I was like, man, it would just
so
be
much extra work.
So nice if they could just be packaged in the same facility, and I would just be sent a done game, because that would be a lot of labor trying to put those together. And I almost went away from it. The box, and then it wasn't until like halfway through the manufacturing process that I was like, hey, we could have them roll the box.
So that was like a last second decision.
Yeah.
Roll it. Because that's what Dice Fight's all about.
Yeah.
Is rolling the box.
Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, we can have them roll the box. It could be super powerful. And like, I had ordered all 500 copies before we even had a box to play with.
No way.
Right? Like, we just had like a stand-in Biggs D6, right, to be the box, and no one was enthused about it in the playthroughs because it was just a slightly bigger D6, right? Mm-hmm. And so I was already deep in it before I had any kind of prototype to the game, and I was just sort of like, screw it, we're going to make this happen, it's going to happen. School is more expensive than this mistake, so and people make that mistake all the time. so yeah, it was pretty last minute, and I was like, oh yeah, it was super side thought, and now it's turning out to be like the thing that, like, just like you're saying, it's the game.
Yeah, didn't you say you went on that community where there's all these developers, people who've been spending their lives dedicating to creating board games, and you said that there was like a pretty significant response.
Yeah,
when
there's
they
like
realized
14,000 people on that Facebook page that I'm part of, and there's designers, there's publishers, there's distributors, there's just artists who like doing board game art, like a huge community of people.
And when you first posted that you could roll the box, what was their response?
Well, the funny thing with that post is I was just saying, like, because I felt kind of bad about this game, because like going through that board game community, people are doing awesome stuff. Like they're making such cool games, and then I see it hit Kickstarter and they're just knocking out of the park, raising $300,000, and I like saw them talking about it in the game, and I'm like, man, my game is just such garbage, because they're making like mid to heavy games. So like in the board game world, there's light, mid, and heavy games, and this would be a light game, right? And there's nothing wrong with light games. It's more accessible to the world, but I'm seeing all these like mid and heavy games that are like more like Arkham Horror and like so many pieces and complicated, which I love.
Like Talisman games with tons of little mini.
That's a heavy game for sure. And so I posted, I'm like, guys, I kind of like feel like crap. Like my game's garbage compared to all your guys's. And I'm like, and then it was a PS. This picture is just so I could have a picture in the post. The box is beat up because you can roll the box in the game. It was just a PS.
Little throwaway edit.
And then it got like 200 comments on it of people being like, roll the box. This is crazy. I've never heard of rolling this box. The mad chaos of it. I want to do this so bad. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? Like, that's not the cool thing. Or in my head, it wasn't the cool thing. But
that was an afterthought halfway through manufacturing.
That was an afterthought halfway through manufacturing. And now people are like, that's the cool thing about the game. That's the thing. And then I actually had a YouTuber reach out to me. He's part of a couple different YouTube channels. It's Quackalope is the big one. If you're a Quackalopian, they have a specific name for the people.
It's called Quackalopian. They call themselves
It's not Quackalopian. It's something else.
Oh, you messed it up.
I messed it up. But we're going to call them Quackalopians. I'm so sorry. Badger us in the comments if you really have a problem with this. Anyways, Quackalope's the main channel. They have like 46,000 subscribers. Jesse is the main persona on it. And then there's Quack & Co., which is like the side channel where Jesse was also a main thing. But they had just onboarded full-time. It was like 4 months ago now. They onboarded a guy named West who one of his main responsibilities was to help shine light on indie board game creators. And so West saw this post and he reached out to me. He's like, Roll in the Box, that sounds really cool. You should send me a copy. No, he actually was like, are you going to be at all these conventions that every board game designer should go to? And I'm like, I didn't even know those conventions existed. If I'm going to be, I responded this way. I'm like, I didn't know those conventions really existed. Should I be going to those? And he's like, yeah, you definitely should. I'm like, well, I won't be able to go to those that you're talking about, but I'd be happy to mail it to you. And he's like, okay, sounds great. And he's like, if it plays well, we'll talk about maybe making some videos and putting it on our YouTube channel. And honestly, that was the moment that I was like, maybe this board game could be something, maybe. And I try not to get my hopes up too much with this, but that's when I was really like, okay, this could be a thing. And then it was weeks later, we ordered 500 and I paid for extra shipping, like more expensive shipping for 60 to get to me like the first week of December. And then I paid for the cheapest option to get to me mid-January, which, by the way, at least at the time this is being recorded, they're all at my house right now.
They just showed up this week, right? They
showed up as I was leaving to go to the airport to come here to do this with me. So I am so antsy to do an unboxing of 440 games that just showed up. And
you need a video of you with an armful of like 20 boxes and rolling them all slow-mo at the camera.
That would be awesome, but it also would like damage them.
Yeah, you're right. You don't want people paying for used product.
But there are, super, super exciting stuff. But then West, I thought those 60 games, honestly, I'd be taking the next 2 months to sell. I thought I'd still be selling them. Maybe be through like 20 sold right now. But the moment they hit and I started telling people about it, those 60 sold out in a week. And all I did was like some social media posts. Like I didn't pay for any advertising. It was just me posting on social media and gone. And I was like, what? People were ordering like 10 and 6. It was like right before Christmas. So they were like, this is the perfect stocking stuffer gift because it's a small little box gift.
Yeah.
Uncle Gregory ordered 10 of them.
Oh, really?
Right. And I'm already seeing dividends from that. By the way, Uncle Gregory, if you're watching this, thank you so much. Because he obviously gifted it to like an in-law. Like I'm pretty sure Uncle Gregory's son, whose name is Gregory, his wife's brother got the game recently.
All right. That was hard to get through.
It was hard to get through. For some reason, I'm obsessed with figuring out how they figured out about the game. So,
when you get an order and you're like, I actually don't know that person.
I don't know that
person.
person.
Hear about it?
And then I go, I'm like, oh, it's my cousin's in-law. Because I'm pretty sure what happened is Uncle Gregory gifted it to Gregory. They ended up playing it with their in-laws, and now he just ordered a couple.
So other than word of mouth, which is that original shipment, you've got a fairly small but a little quite bigger of around 400 more that just got shipped in?
Yeah, 440. I have about 7 pre-sales of those.
So you're going to start working on doing some actual marketing, which is going to include a Kickstarter that's going to be coming up, right? Yep. What day is the Kickstarter going to go down?
So the Kickstarter is going to launch on January 30th.
Okay.
And we got some pretty cool like little prizes for there. It's actually one of the cheapest ways that you can like get the game is through the Kickstarter. You can order it on the website, but that's the retail price of $30, and on the Kickstarter it's $20 to get it. Plus there's some pretty cool little gifts, like one of the tiers you get dice towers, which could honestly be used for any game. So
I just learned about dice towers. I'd never heard of them before. It's pretty much a wooden box that has a chute, and you just drop all your dice in it, and that way you don't have to pick up a huge amount of dice and roll them, right?
because it's super satisfying. If you're playing with multi-boxes, you can be rolling up to 40 dice, potentially, end game. But in a normal game, you rolling an average of like 20 dice at the end, which that's it. Even though these are small dice, it's kind of a lot. Super fun, super satisfying to roll. But we'll have a dice tower. We're making special play mats for this that should help gameplay as well. And there's a big, like, custom handmade, made from one of the Woodstock brothers, collector's box.
I'm excited to see that. He was giving me just a little bit of the details on how he's going to construct them, and those are going to be some like super high pricey boxes.
Yeah, like those boxes, like if you just sold them on like Etsy or something like that, they're like $500 boxes.
He's using some quality wood, and I've seen Scott's woodworking. He does a fantastic job. I'm always jealous when I see how better his stuff is than mine.
Yeah, I kind of like fibbed the truth a little bit with the Kickstarter, because in the description I was like, the Woodstock family has been woodworking for 25 years.
Well, that's true.
Which is 100% true. Like, because Jamin, he started woodworking.
I was 15 years old when I first started doing carpentry.
We all were pretty young. We've all dabbled in it. And I think we all like secretly wanted to be woodworkers because of our name, Woodstock. It was like, I kind of need to be good with wood. But Scott, I think, is the one who is surpassing us all in the woodworking.
He's put in definitely a lot of time, and he cares about it. Like, in order to do some of the high quality stuff that he's doing, the fine detail, you just have to be able to sit there for hours and hours and fine tune your craft. Really, is what it comes down to.
Yeah, he's doing like miter joints with splines in them, with a walnut spline. Do you know what a spline is?
I don't. I'm embarrassed.
Exactly, right? So miter joint, so basically two corners come to...
Yeah.
He basically is cutting at the corner and inserting a piece of walnut wood into the brown maple hardwood. And it's gonna look so good. And he's also like custom making the lid, so there's no actual hardware on it. It just like slides in perfect tight fit. It's going to be gorgeous. He actually made a box kind of like that.
Because it fits 4 of these, right? So we've got
all
the
4 of these
collector's box
together.
together.
The collector's box comes with 2 games, so it's enough for 4 people to play.
Oh, 4 people to play. Gotcha.
4 play mats, so each of those 4 people could get it, as well as 4 dice towers. So all 4 of the people have the dice towers, and all of that will fit into the collector's box.
The mats and the towers all fit inside the collector's box?
The games, the mats, the towers will all fit inside the collector's box.
I can't wait until he's done with that. I can't wait. Is he going to be done in time for the Kickstarter?
So I gave him a deadline of the 10th to get done with the, because he's making a collector's box. He's basically making the whole collector's box setup so we can do photography for the Kickstarter so people can see what they're doing. But he won't actually start making... There truly are going to be custom made. He's not going to start making those unless people actually back it. Okay. And honestly, like, I want a lot of people to play dice fights and enjoy that. But like those upper tiers, you're getting such a good value with like custom handcrafted beautiful things. And like, honestly, if everyone just got the bigger tiers and didn't get the lower tiers, I would be stoked, because that would be something that would push Scott to like the next level, and like the confidence he would get from being like, holy crap. Because that's going to be hundreds of, like, I'm going to be making like $2 off those dice towers.
Off the higher tiers.
Off like all the...
You'll be making more money off the lower tiers, right?
Yeah, like, and even like I'm taking a pretty small margin on the games too, but like all the handcrafted stuff, Scott is going to be making more money on the handcrafted stuff than I'm making on it, right? And I'm more than happy for that to be the case, because if that can jumpstart his, because he's always wanted to like do woodworking out of his garage and make like a hobby shop that's sufficient, like that is actually producing stuff. And I think this could be the jumpstart. So it's like, it's not only going to be kickstarting dice fights, but it actually will probably kickstart like Woodstock woodworking in a way. That's my woodworking handle, but I think he's going to be taking over my Etsy with Woodstock woodworking. By the way, I have an Etsy, Woodstock Woodworking. Shameless plug. But yeah, like I would be so stoked if all those sold out, because as it stands, he might, like if all those upper tier, because there's only a limited number. We're not doing unlimited because we want to respect the backers and be able to get them the things in a timely fashion. So there's only 25 open higher tiers for just the dice fights and mats. And then there's only 5 available of the collector's box, right? So it's going to be ultra limited edition. We're never going to be making those collector's boxes again. You only will be able to get them on Kickstarter. But altogether, that would be 70 dice towers and 5 boxes he would be making if all of those sold out, which that's a lot to go through Scott's operation, but I think he could handle it, and he's going to do such a gorgeous job. All the Woodstocks and their woodworking and anything are just like super picky. I think woodworking more than anything, we are super hypercritical on the things that we make.
Yeah, I didn't realize how picky we were until I worked with other carpenters, what I'm doing now, and no offense to them. It's a different thing. Cut that part out. I don't care. But what I'm really excited about those upper tiers and the boxes that he's making is, first off, and I've told you this once before, you've used the term evergreen before. It's something that continued down. Imagine like an Uno or a Settlers of Catan, that it becomes a household name. I think you did a good enough job to make it simple, yet still the replay value is through the roof. I've already played this with my daughter, with my wife who doesn't really like gaming too much. I played it competitively with you, and I still look forward to playing it more. I truly think this has the potential to be a game that people start to recognize. And if you're able to, at the very beginning, get a custom-made box, imagine being the guy that has that Catan custom-made wooden box from when it was a Kickstarter 10 years ago and they're still selling it. That's exciting to me, because I can't tell you enough how proud I am of you of coming up with something that truly has just great balance. It's very aesthetically pleasing, and it's simple enough to where you can play with your 9-year-old daughter, which I've done, which I believe West said he was playing with his children as well. Mm-hmm. It has the ability to transcend the age groups. And as we proved here, when you kicked my ass 2 times in a row, but the third time I got you,
you did.
There is a very good competitive value to that. What I'm excited is when you open up the sales again, which I think you just did. You can go on to your website and get it, right?
You absolutely can.
Which I'm going to make all of my friends grab some so we can actually have like a multi-game. I want to get like 8 guys playing at once and see how crazy it gets. All of them competitive, and see how it goes.
So I've played an 8-player game, and it is even at the start, you're starting with 40 dice rolling on the table at the start. And so once you get into it a little bit, you're rolling 200 dice all at the same time on it, and just the sound of like the dice clattering, just super satisfying. So satisfying. Gameplay aside, ultra satisfying.
Before we finish this up, we've already done a few shameless plugs, but you mentioned the YouTube. Make sure anyone repeat the YouTube channel that's been helping you out. Repeat your website and any of your other social media, just so people can be reminded of it.
Yeah. So Quackalope and Quack & Co. Super awesome. Like they really shed some light. They've been helping me out, answering my questions. Like I'm not paying them for any of this, and they just are happy to do it. And their whole thing is that they want to build an awesome board gaming community, and they're doing everything they can, and I can see that. In fact, Quack & Co. is doing this awesome thing where they're doing a giveaway for a game called Frosthaven, which if you're into board games, you know about Frosthaven, but they're giving away a copy of Frosthaven. Once they hit 10,000 subscribers, you just got to go and find that video on there. And they're getting really close. Probably by the time this posts, they're probably going to be like right on the edge of going there. So check out Quack & Co., Quackalope. give them a follow. If you like board games, like, you're going to love their content. It's hilarious. It's great. They do playthroughs, reviews, gripes, gives shout outs to new Kickstarters. They're actually doing a video about this coming out in Kickstarter and doing a review for us as well. And then, yeah, you can go to woodstockgames.com, pick up a copy of your game, Dice Fights, share it with people. Really, even if all you did was go on to Kickstarter and just follow the project on Kickstarter, that does a ton to help make the game more visible to backers, right? So even if you don't have a dime to put towards it, just following the project does a ton. Just follow the journey, and that helps. So like, follow, subscribe, follow the journey. And honestly, for Jace's podcast, I Am Woodstock, if you haven't listened to any other episodes, go listen to more, because it's honestly quality entertainment. I've listened to, I think I'm missing like 3 episodes, but I've listened to most of them. And you get to see people from all sorts of walks of life, and totally worth going and following and getting the updates of the new videos. So like, follow, subscribe, all the things. I Am Woodstock, Woodstock Games, Jace Woodstock, J. Daniel Woodstock, Woodstock. I am
Woodstock for 1,000 years.
Woodstock for 1,000 years.
I love you, brother, so much. Thank you very much for flying down to spend some time with your brother. And I'm going to talk your ear off for the next 8 hours on pretty much what we've just been talking about, but continuing. But for now, this podcast's over. Love you. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Well, everybody, we just finished up an episode 1 of I Am Woodstock Season 2 with my brother, who I love very much, J. Daniel Woodstock. He's the creator of Dice Fights, a new up-and-coming game that is taking the game world by storm. We talked a little bit about in the episode his journey of the self-doubt and how to push through that, how to reach out to manufacturers, as well as being vulnerable and helping other people by talking about your dark moments in life. Everyone reach out, go to iamwoodstock.com, leave any comments that you want. Let's open up a discussion and let's have a conversation.
I Am Woodstock.